Some gold seekers traveled by water. They took a ship around Cape Horn on the southern tip of South America. Others sailed to the Isthmus of Panama. After crossing the isthmus overland, they finished their trip by ship. Sailing to California, like the trip by wagon, was a long and difficult journey. Going around South America could take 6 months or more. The trip across Panama was shorter. Both routes, though, were challenging. So you know what they're talking about. Right here is where the Panama Isthmus is, right? So they would take a boat and go right to here, and then they get off the boat and they'd have to go by land, and then they would go by boat to get up to the gold country. And some of them would go all the way around South America, all the way. Now, since then, the Isthmus of Panama has a canal, so ships can get through, and it's a much shorter route. But back then, no such luck. Let's see. Lucretia Stanley Wilson spent her first days on the overland trail on plains much like Missouri farmland. Still, there were unexpected dangers. One was river crossings. There were no bridges or ferries. At Wilson's first crossing, she and her family made it safely to the other side, but the wagon behind her got stuck in the river. The oxen pulling the wagon sank into the sands of the riverbed. The poor beasts disappeared under the water, taking the loaded wagon with them. The Wilsons would face more river crossings. They would also pass amazing sights, but they could not enjoy them. There was not time to note the great natural wonders that lay along the route, Wilson later recounted. Someone would speak of a remarkable valley, a group of cathedral-like rocks, some mineral springs, a salt basin, but we never deviated, which means to go away from or stray from, the direct route to see them. After 3 months, the Wilsons had managed to cross the plains. Next, they made the grueling climb over the Rocky Mountains. Then they entered the most dangerous region yet, the desert. In the desert, the trail was littered with abandoned wagons. Wilson saw animal and even human bones. She must have feared that her family would meet the same fate. The heat was terrible. A fine, dry dust covered them. Thirst tormented them. Their oxen seemed ready to collapse at any time. Still, the Wilsons kept going. Finally, the ragged family reached a river. Their oxen drank eagerly. Wilson rejoiced. She and her family had survived. Their exhausting trip would soon be over. Once they crossed the high Sierra Nevada, they would reach the gold fields of California. Life in California differed from the life Wilson had known in Missouri. On her first night there, a miner paid her $10 for some bread. This was a great amount of money at the time. Wilson could see that she might get rich, but not in the gold fields. In my dreams that night, she wrote, I saw crowds of bearded miners striking gold from the earth with every blow of the pick, each one seeming to leave a share for me. She could earn her fortune by cooking for hungry miners. Why was the miner willing to pay so much? It was a matter of supply and demand. There were tens of thousands of miners. Most were men who could not cook. What Wilson offered, home-cooked meals, was in short supply. The men were willing to pay huge sums for her meals. Wilson spent her gold rush years running a hotel and restaurant. People kept coming. Cities sprang up quickly. Before the gold rush, San Francisco had fewer than 1,000 people. Soon it had tens of thousands of residents. Many came from foreign countries such as China. The Chinese people have been an important part of California's population ever since. Most of the gold seekers did not strike it rich. Some went home, but many, like the Wilsons, stayed on in their new land. In fact, because so many newcomers stayed, California joined the United States in 1850. 2 decades later, a railroad linked California to the eastern part of the country. No longer would travelers to the West Coast have to endure a long, dangerous journey like that of Louisa Stanley Wilson and her family. Passengers could now watch the geographic wonders of the United States. Broad plains, majestic mountains, deep rivers rushed by their train windows. California and the rest of the country had been transformed.